Hello, this is Tom with the Tractor Rescue Ranch. I'm going to try to answer some questions that people have submitted on the comments. First of all, there was a question of how the action works. I wanted an explanation of how everything works, and so I thought I'd start from the back end and go forward. On this carriage, moving this carriage back and forth, you can see the cable system. You can see the pulley up there, so that cable starts on the carriage, runs through that pulley, and then comes up here to this drum, takes some wraps around the drum, and then runs up here through this pulley, and then back to the carriage, clear on the other end of the carriage. So from there, all you have to do is turn this drum back and forth, and that's what pulls the carriage back and forth. So from that drum that has the cables on it, you've got a shaft that comes up here underneath the husk, and there's this set of gears right here and there, and then it runs to these flat belt pulleys. So when you turn this flat belt pulley one direction or the other, it's all transferred through all of this mechanism to that drum that the cables are on. So from there, you've got this main shaft that's turning a constant direction, the same direction all the time. And so you've got these two flat belts. And so when you tighten up, when you push this forward, with that pushed forward, it tightens this pulley and loosens this pulley, which tightens this belt, which runs over here onto this other mechanism that eventually goes out to the cables. So with this side tightened, it's running one direction. So when you pull this handle back, it tightens this belt and loosens this belt. And so these belts are designed to slip when they're not tight. So which tightens on that and goes through and runs this the other direction. Okay, having a hard time here figuring out how to explain this. So you can see on this particular one, this belt runs around here, through here, and then around the top of this one, which turns it the same direction, turns this the same direction as that. So this other one, the belt comes across here, back through there, and it's running the opposite direction on this pulley, and then comes over the top of this one. And so when this belt's tightened, it runs it the opposite direction. So anyway, tighten that pulley, runs it one direction. Tighten that pulley, runs it the opposite direction. I hope I've kind of explained that correctly. As you can see, this belt comes off the top of the pulley and goes over the top of this pulley. So this belt comes off the bottom of that pulley and goes over the top of this one, which changes the direction of it moving. So that's how the carriage is accomplished, to make it go back and forth using the one directional main shaft. So another thing here on these controls, you can see this foot pedal here, and when I push that foot pedal, this board hit there in the back goes up and down, and when you come over here, when I push that foot pedal and that board goes up, it interacts with this big pulley, and you can see how that interacts with all of this. But what it does here, it pushes that up, which disengages all of those things, and then it also turns. So that's what backs up these knees. So as I'm going back and that's turning, it'll back those knees up. And this is actually multi-directional. You can put the knees back or forward by using this, just by what direction the carriage is moving. I don't ever use it going forward because I've found that it's kind of hard to control how far forward, so I just pull it forward with this mechanism when I need the knees to go forward and advance the log, is with that there. I've already done a video on this. The one thing that I didn't mention when I did that last video on this one is just one single direction. But some of these apparatus are multi-directional, so they would twist your pull handle here to a different direction, and when you pull it, it would run this back or forward. But mine isn't made that way, so I can only go one direction with this pull handle. So with all of this apparatus working, going forward and back with those knees all run in parallel with each other at the same time. So when you adjust the board thickness here, all three of the knees move at the same time. Now there is a way to adjust them to make sure that they're all out the same. So this, what you would do to adjust them is this apparatus would turn solid into this leading knee, and then if that distance from the blade was different than this distance from the blade, you can adjust this So you'd set your distance to the blade, like say 2 feet from the blade with that knee, and then advance the carriage forward, and then adjust this down here to where it was the same distance from the blade. So you have those two running equal. And then if your last knee is out of adjustment, there's another adjustment here with those slotted holes where you could adjust this one as well so that your knees were all running exactly parallel with the blade. So I hope those explanations help out. So the other question that I'd had is how to handle a tapered log. And so the idea is this log's not very tapered, but if you had a small end here and a large end down here, the wood that you would want to cut out of it, you would want to take the wood out of the middle, because if you had the small end here, this would be over here, and then you'd start taking the wood out of one end, and then your grain wouldn't end up going straight down the log. So what you need to do with longer logs, you get more taper than these short 8-foot logs of mine, but sometimes I have a tapered log. So what you need to do is the amount of taper, you need to slide the small end up so that the log is taken out of the wood you're cutting is taken out of the middle of the log. And some people accomplish that by pulling it forward and dropping a block in there and then dogging it. But this particular mill has a apparatus to control that. So what you can do, you need to have the small end of the taper towards this end of on this knee. And so what you do is you can move this forward to hold the log out there, so you don't need that block that some people use to put in there. So what you would do is you'd move this out as far as you needed to get the log going straight for the first cut, and then when you flop the log over for the second cut, you just put that back in and you're going square. So what you would want to do, if you had an 8-inch log on that side and a 6-inch log on this side, you would want to move it so that it was the 1-inch difference here and then 1-inch difference on that side. So this apparatus here on this carriage is how you would accomplish that. And this particular carriage actually has one, if you're doing longer logs, it has one of those on this side of it and one on that side of it. So that way it doesn't matter when you had your logs loaded on the log deck, it wouldn't make any difference which end the small end of the taper would be, because you can adjust either that side or this side. But with these small logs, I have to make sure that the small end of the taper is towards this end here where I've got the adjustment on it, because this middle knee doesn't have any adjustment there. So that's how that part works. So the up and down adjustment on that doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is this horizontal adjustment, because the blade is running parallel up and down. So it doesn't make any difference on the taper if the log is up or down on this side. Now if this were a band sawmill, instead of adjusting this piece, in order to take care of the taper, you would adjust up and down. But on a circular mill like this, you don't do that. It only adjusts from the side so that it'll run parallel with the blade. These particular things are pretty self-explanatory. And what you do with these, a lot of different mills are made a little bit different, but on these ones you pull that out and it releases it, and then you can push the ratcheting part down. So anyway, today, after that long-winded explanation, I am going to mill a few, whatever I end up with, 6x6 or 8x8s, big cants here, for thinking ahead for a project of splitting that John Deere tractor we have, Scott's John Deere 400. We're going to split it, and so what I need is some cribbing to block up the back end of that tractor. So that's what I'm going to be doing today with the sawmill. Well, there's what I accomplished. I like cutting these big squares out. It's a lot of fun, and the cracks in this old dry beetle kill lumber don't bother me as much. But anyway, two 2x6s approximately. This top one is a 3.5 by 3.5, and then one great big one. So the next video down the road here, we'll be using all of this stuff to crib up underneath that John Deere tractor. So if I didn't explain anything good enough on how this machine runs, go ahead and leave me a comment and I'll try to do a better job. Thanks for watching.